Hello, and welcome to Virtual Birding. We've got a really special one here today. Definitely the rarest of all of the target birds we've had. An absolute mega rarity, the red-flanked bluetail. Now you can see the two birds here. One is blue, one is brown. What we're going to be looking for is the female, which is brown, but it does have red flanks and a blue tail, so should be relatively easy to identify. Got some birds right away here at the top of this tree. And a bunch of blackbirds that are going to take off almost immediately, but if you looked real close, you had some brown-headed cowbirds that had that real sort of blunt bill, and then the sharper-billed grackles and red-winged blackbirds, but that grackle having a very, very large tail. Now to look for the red-flanked bluetail, we should have gone straight there, but I heard some birds moving over here, so take a look. So I got a quick look at a song sparrow there, but there's definitely some other birds in this flock. And from my understanding is this red-flanked bluetail does sometimes move with other birds in mixed flocks. So this is probably a pretty good spot to start. So let's see what else we got in here, see if we can pick out a bluetail. There's our song sparrow, so figured out where that thing went. Definitely a lot more birds moving right in front of us. There we've got a nice golden crowned kinglet, one of the better looks we've had at that bird. You could really see its golden crown there, so that was pretty neat. See one so low, oftentimes they're very high. There's another bird there, another kinglet. It's hard to get a good look at it there, but oh, I just saw a little bit of a ruby crown, and yeah, there it comes out, so ruby crown kinglet. You often see the gold on the top of a golden crown kinglet's head, but seeing the red on a ruby crown kinglet is actually pretty difficult, so that's very cool. See those two birds back to back and get the ruby crowns on both. Definitely not something I see every day. Here we have a Carolina chickadee up high. That's difficult to see. That is something I see most every day. So we'll keep looking. Something moving on that branch. It looks like we've got an eastern gray squirrel carrying a nut. Maybe gonna go stash it somewhere. Alright. That seems to be most of that mixed flock, but there's some birds flying over. Can hear them, fish crows, real big flock there. And we'll keep making our way down the trail, see if we can find anything else. It's definitely this red-bellied woodpecker calling a lot, but most of the other birds have moved on, but there's something across this little patch of frozen water. There we have a nice look at a blue jay. One of the nicer looks that we've had, really. Very nice. All fluffed up on the branch. It is somewhat chilly today and quite foggy, which isn't maybe the best weather for going out birding. I thought it would be a little bit better when I left before dawn, but you sort of get the day that you get. Up there, got another bird moving. Looks like another chickadee high in the tree up in the fog. Can keep making our way along. This snow is almost gone. It's really been melting out, which has sort of made this path pretty icy. So as I'm walking along here, I've got to be pretty careful. There's something down the path. Got a white-breasted nuthatch, probably the one that just called. And there it takes off. Alright, we'll keep making our way along. And right up here, these two paths are going to come pretty close to meeting. And so we're actually going to make a turn left and get out on the main trail and go into the area back towards the parking lot, which is the primary area the red-flanked bluetail has been hanging out. Now, red-flanked bluetail is a bird that you don't normally see in North America, and it's maybe a bird that you're expecting to see because you've seen the thumbnail and you saw a picture of a red-flanked bluetail. But actually, I took that photo a couple years ago when one showed up in New Jersey. And so there have been two red-flanked bluetails showing up on the East Coast relatively back-to-back, but don't let that fool you. It is an extremely rare bird. Red-flanked bluetail is a bird that should be in Japan, South China, the Korean Peninsula, areas like that in the winter. And this one is here in Virginia, which is very far from there. Take a moment to see this bird here. Oh, it's not a bird. There's white-tailed deer moving at the top of the hill. I feel like the white-tailed deer got me last time too, just seeing a little bit of motion. But yeah, back to red-flanked bluetail. There's actually one calling right there. I heard that bird when I was out, and I didn't really know what it was. I thought maybe something like a winter wren, or maybe one of these Carolina wrens doing something I'd never heard before, but I didn't really realize it was the red-flanked bluetail. So even though we can hear red-flanked bluetail there, I did not count it at this point because I had no idea what that bird sounded like. And that's because I really don't have much experience with this bird at all. Being a bird that's usually in Asia, it's not a bird that I run into terribly often. And when they do show up in North America, it's almost always in Alaska and California, Washington, someplace like that that's on the West Coast. And so there's very, very few records of that bird in North America at all, but that's where you'd expect it if it did show up. Now this bird is obviously in Virginia, here at Great Falls Park, but it's really only the second bird ever to show up on the East Coast of this species, so pretty special, very, very rare, and definitely a bird that was worth coming out and looking for. This area of the main trail right near the parking lot is where it's mostly been seen, so our strategy is going to be to go back and forth and see if we can see it. And here we have a bird, but it's not the bluetail, it's a white-throated sparrow moving in that tangle. But every bit of motion we'll take a look at, and hopefully we can find it. Red-bellied woodpecker calling, Carolina wrens singing. Definitely a lot of birds out here making noise, but again, I didn't really know what red-flanked bluetail sounded like, so that wasn't going to do me a lot of good. I really need to spot it. And spotting red-flanked bluetail is actually pretty difficult, at least based on my experiences in New Jersey when I saw it a few years back. It's a pretty subtle bird. They're essentially an old world flycatcher, and they're similar to the flycatchers that we have here in that they spend a lot of time just completely perched, sort of still, maybe wagging their tails a little bit, but not really doing a lot of movement, and then they'll sort of zip off and perch somewhere else and kind of sit still. And that behavior makes them very, very subtle, and if you're not looking at the exact moment that they fly, you can't really pick them up on motion, which is the easiest way to pick up a bird. Whereas something like those kingmotes that we saw earlier were much easier to see because they're almost in constant motion, and picking up on that motion makes them a little easier to see. But a little patience here. I think we have got a really good chance of this bird. It's actually been around for a couple months, so it's going to leave eventually, but I imagined that if it's been around for a couple months, there's no reason it wouldn't be around today. And I guess we've already heard it, even though I didn't know that, so we do know it's around. So hopefully we will be able to lay eyes on it. But the strategy here, certainly, as you can see, is sort of stop, watch this hillside a little bit, scan around, move a little bit further, scan around, real slow, very patient, and really watching for any of even the tiny bit of movement. Right in this area, there's a clump of berries that this bird has really been enjoying as well. Actually, just a bit back to our left now. And that's going to be the spot that I think we probably have the most likely chance of getting it, because that has been an area it's feeding and an area it seems to return to quite a bit from what I've read online. So we'll see if that pans out for us. There's a bird sitting out on the sticks, and it's a crow. But again, here could be American crow, could be fish crow, so without hearing it, it's almost impossible to tell. Keep moving along, but there's a bird out there on the water in a little break in the ice. There we have a mallard. Nice green head, grayish back. A little tough to see in the fog, but easy enough to identify. Pretty common bird, pretty bird we're very familiar with. All right. Nice distraction, picking up a new species, but we'll get back at the task at hand. Keeping an eye out for this red-flanked bluetail. It's got to be in here somewhere. Another bird up high. We have a northern flicker, pretty tough to see in the fog, but you can see that really dark breastband. You can see that woodpecker shape. Definitely tells us what that bird is. Alright, we've made it to the end of the area that the red-flanked bluetail's been hanging out, so we'll start making our way back again, see if on this pass we can pick it up. Slow and steady, a lot of patience. That is what rare bird chases more often than not are. Sometimes it can take a couple minutes, like last time when we found those red-cockaded woodpeckers almost immediately, but more often than not, it can take quite a long time to find a bird like this, and you sort of know what the area is, and you just work it back and forth until you find what you're looking for, or you can't spend any more time and you head home. But definitely rare bird chases is definitely a different kind of birding than a lot of the birding that I do. But the main key is patience. There you heard that red-flanked bluetail again, but again I did not know what it sounded like and ended up looking at this cardinal instead. Also pretty, but not necessarily what we're looking for. Keep making our way along. Northern flicker calling quite a bit. Probably that same one that we saw a couple minutes ago. Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of movement here, which is kind of too bad. I was hoping that mixed flock might come off the river and end up over here, which would potentially help us, because, yeah, again, this bird has been reported to be in with some of the mixed flocks from time to time, and then sometimes it's reported that it is on its own, so doesn't mean we won't see it because we don't have a mixed flock, but if nothing else, mixed flock sort of breaks up the boredom of waiting for this bird to show up a little bit, because it'll give us something to look at instead of just this foggy, half-snowy hillside. But I also suppose it sort of functions as a distraction as well, because sometimes when there's a lot of birds moving, it's harder to pick out the sort of more subtly moving birds because you have a lot of distractions. So I guess there's a positive and a negative to either situation. Got a little bit more movement where we saw those white-throated sparrows before in that tangle, and sure enough, the white-throated sparrows are still there. I wouldn't think the red-flanked bluetail would be down in a tangle like this. They typically are pretty low to the ground, and oftentimes will drop down to the ground to feed, but I wouldn't think they would be down in a dense tangle, but really at this point, any bit of motion that we see is worth exploring. And so as I see more movement in this tangle, we'll take a look. And yeah, it's still that white-throated sparrow. Alright. Not seeing anything here, so we'll start making another pass. Hopefully this time will be the time. Making our way back to the start of the trail where we popped over onto this trail towards that little patch of berries that the bird has sometimes shown up in. Rare bird chasing is definitely a very interesting thing. It's a lot of boredom, a lot of waiting. Can be very, very slow, but then when you get the bird, the payoff is pretty great. So it's kind of a high and low experience instead of a sort of constant experience. And there was a little bird that flew into that bush. Oh yeah, and look, there it is. Red-flanked Bluetail, little brown bird. It's actually making that call that we heard before, and we got it. Red-flanked Bluetail. It's hard to tell from the video, but that bird actually flew out of that little berry bush right after I put my binoculars down. So whereas we often will try to get a second look at our target bird, it took off pretty far. So we will start making our way out. Definitely keep an eye out for anything interesting on the way back, but target bird acquired, and that's really all I was planning on getting here. There's a lot of trail here, and I actually thought about taking a longer walk, but it's so icy with that half-melted snow. Oh, but there's a bald eagle. That's worth taking a look at. We've seen bald eagle before, but it's hard to pass up a bald eagle if you have a chance to see one, so we'll pop back over to the river before we leave, see if we can't get a look at that bald eagle. But yeah, as I was saying, it's been so icy, I don't know that I want to take a really long walk on this trail. This park was actually closed for quite a bit before I came out here for that reason, so we will take a look at this bald eagle and then head out. There it is out in the fog, looking very elegant. Nice bald eagle, white head, dark body. I can hear American crow, maybe that was that one that we saw earlier. Oh, and there it actually goes through our view. Alright, very cool, but as I was looking at this eagle, I noticed a little bit of movement in one of these broken open patches down here, so we'll take a look at what's swimming about out here. There's maybe some of the canid geese that we saw earlier, and there's a duck, and as it turns, it's a bird that we haven't had before, a ring-necked duck. Ring-necked duck's sort of a funny bird because it's got a very ringed bill, but without the bird in hand, you actually can't see the ring on the neck. It was named by someone that had sort of shot the bird and was looking at a specimen, and they could push up the neck feathers and see that there is a white ring on that neck, but I have literally never seen it, and I've seen thousands and thousands of ring-necked ducks in the wild. I don't know that anybody has really seen a ring-necked duck ring. And so, yeah, interesting bird, interesting name, and a new one for us as we wrap up this bird walk. So for our walk summary, we had 23 species of birds and 2 species of mammals. We walked 0.28 miles, not terribly far, in an hour and 35 minutes, and we saw the red-flanked bluetail. Here we have our species lists, and as always, if there's a bird that we only heard and didn't see, it'll be marked with HO, and any birds that are new for our virtual birding life list will have an N. Like usual, I'll pick a bird of the day, and it's pretty hard for the bird of the day not to be red-flanked bluetail. I think that's what I have to pick, which is our target bird. But I will say, both golden crown kinglet and ruby crown kinglet together, and both seeing the color of their crown was really special too. And so maybe that moment of those two birds combined together, right back to back, might be as cool as the red-flanked bluetail, at least to me. And for our virtual birding life list, we have 93 species of birds now, with 5 new today, and although we saw mammals, no new ones, so we're still at 4. Thanks for coming out to Great Falls Park with me to find an absolutely amazing mega rarity. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'll see you next time, and happy birding.